How about Mr. Henshaw talking to us about construction, early childhood planning?
Mr. Henshaw and I are going to switch the order.
How about Mr. You're making me look really bad now.
That's
Pretty
why
good job of
you
that
were
on my
going
own.
up. You would have got to Craig first. You sensed that, Tony.
We've combined both topics tonight into one presentation. This presentation that you're looking at tonight is what we did at our last board meeting, but we've added points to it. But we do want to keep all this in front of everyone as often as we can, just to make sure that we're communicating well here. So our timeline, which we've seen, we are under the gold arrow now, which will cover a large span of time here, design and development phase. With the goal, just one reminder out there at the end, that everything that we're talking about will open in August of 2017. So we will begin construction and a lot of the planning during this school year. It will continue during the school year next year and finish up and then be ready to open the following year, August of 2017. A reminder about the scope of our project. Constructing classrooms at Rolla High School, grade changes at all buildings across the district and reconfiguration. Co-curricular programs at the 7th grade, and then early childhood programming at all 3 of our elementary buildings, which will become pre-K through 3rd grade buildings. We do have, as you know, 4 planning teams working throughout this planning phase. You'll hear tonight from 2 of them, or results from from the planning of 2 of the committees, the construction committee and the early childhood programming committee. We'll be presenting information on those 2. The other stuff is going on. In fact, I was at a meeting this week with the high school looking ahead to course sequencing and course selections, how that might change when the freshmen move over. So that would fall under the transitions committee. So that work is already starting, obviously looking ahead to when all these movements take place. This is Jenny's timeline. This takes the one little block that we showed on the very first slide and breaks it out and shows the progress that we'll make between now and 2017. I know that's hard to read, but we will be taking a look at the first yellow circle, which is planning our programming locations, and then also the brown circle that falls after it, architectural drawings and specification documents completed, is kind of the parts of this timeline that we'll be looking at tonight. So, early childhood education program planning. Reminder from our last board meeting, the early childhood program was built on these components, and the work that I'm going to present to you tonight is built kind of under these parameters, and that is offering programming at all 3 elementary buildings, a peer model program serving around 120 students that we're kind of anticipating 60 IEP kids and 60 peers in that program, and then academic need classes serving around 60 students. With that total being around the 180 students that we had used as our planning number all throughout the campaign as this process went along. Last week I shared a couple different configurations that we were looking at. I'll remind you of those. Under scenario 1, we were going to offer the peer model program at all 3 elementaries, so a balanced program of peer model classrooms at each elementary, along with academic need classrooms at each elementary. We've also talked about the opportunity here as our elementaries reconfigure to equalize our special education programs at each elementary. Currently, we don't offer all programs at each building, and this would give us the opportunity to balance that and we think serve kids in their home zone better in our SPED program. Scenario 2 that we will also look at is a centralized peer model program at 1 elementary, so the entire population going to 1 building. Still offering academic need classes at each elementary based on attendance zone, and also with equalized special education programs at each elementary. So what we want to do is look at each scenario, and we looked at these factors to help hopefully guide us to a good decision about how we build this program. The different staffing needs that would come under each scenario, the facility implications depending on how we built this, the program effectiveness, and also frankly, the 2017-18 timeline in order to get started. What was the most efficient and best way for us to get this program up and going off the ground? So, for the staffing needs, I've got both scenarios here on the same screen. Scenario 1 was the equalized program. From working through this, and I worked through this with, we worked as a group through this with Stacy Reed, who is here tonight in case you have any questions. She is eager to speak and share her thoughts on this work here. But in order to offer the Scenario 1 program, which is equalized programs at all 3 elementaries, we'll be looking at adding 10 teaching positions in our early childhood program. 7 of those 10 teaching positions would be reimbursed through the early childhood special ed funding, which means we would have a budget impact of 3 teachers that would be paid with through local district funds. Scenario 2 is the centralized peer model program. Depending on our class sizes that we did with the peer model program, would be looking for either 9 or 10 teaching positions. 6 or 7 of those would be reimbursed through early childhood. That one swing position is in the early childhood program, so whether we offer it or not, it would be reimbursed if we did. This has the same budget impact of 3 teachers that we would be paying for out of local funds. So the staffing needs, there is no difference. I would remind you, we talked about this morning that we may need to add to this presentation the budget slide that we had all throughout the campaign. We had built that budget with a range of 4 to 8 teachers anticipated that we would pay for out of local funds. So the impact of adding 3 teachers fits within that plan. It fits up nicely against the 4 that we had talked about there. So both of those are equal. On the facility implications, in order to offer the balanced program, it would result in construction being needed at 2 of our elementary sites. At Mark Twain, in order to offer this, we are 1 classroom short of being able to do all of this. At Truman, we would be we are 2 classrooms short of being able to do this. And the balanced approach would leave Wyman sitting with 3 empty classrooms being unused. So it would require, if we did this balanced approach, it would require us to be looking at construction at 2 of the 3 elementaries in order to handle this program. Under scenario 2, we drew up plans what it would look like depending on which elementary hosted. These 2 did not work out as well as the 3rd that I will show you, but I'll show you what this did look like. If we were to host this at Mark Twain, we would need 5 classrooms added to Mark Twain, and Wyman would be sitting with 7 empty rooms, so that didn't seem to work well. If we were to host the centralized peer model program at Truman, it would require 6 classrooms being added, with Wyman having 7 empty rooms. So again, those 2 options did not seem like good choices. This 3rd choice, and it is the one that I would recommend that we move forward with, is the scenario 2, a centralized peer model program hosted at Wyman. Just as far as the facility implications, we would have Mark Twain with 1 empty room, which Mark Twain right now is our largest elementary and possibly one that would have the greatest need for growth, although that can change, obviously. Truman would fit everything that we want to do without adding any rooms. We would not have any empty rooms to be used, but their current rooms would fit this program. And the centralized peer model program would fit into Wyman with no empty rooms, but with no extra rooms needed. So what we did was try to look at this through a web of factors, including staffing, facilities implication, the program effectiveness in order for us to get started with this in August of 2017 and our ability to offer a full program at that time. And it all fit together for us in moving forward with the recommendation that this is what it would look like when we start in August of 2017. So a centralized peer model program hosted at Wyman, academic need classes hosted at all 3 elementaries, Of course, when we get into the details of selection and selection process, we're not to that point yet. We had identified this as the first step in order to get through because it affects a lot of things throughout the district, including construction. For our next steps, we will be expanding the Early Childhood Transition Committee to get into those folks who work with early childhood now, including our Parents as Teachers program and the early childhood special ed teachers that we currently have to help direct us to make some decisions about how we build this program. Of course, we're going to share our planning models with stakeholders, and we will hopefully keep communicating all throughout this process and answer questions and gather input and let everyone know where we are along the way. So,
Craig, what about issues like transportation, getting kids there? You know, I'm assuming a lot of these kids will be brought by their parents and that type of thing. I mean, I'm assuming you guys went through all that too, but I didn't hear you speak to that.
we are not to that point. That's more of the finer detail. What we first wanted to identify is where we would host this and how we would configure it.
But I mean, isn't that part of that? If you have more coming to Colonel Wyman,
We did.
obviously you're gonna have
I
more
understand what you
traffic.
mean.
Yeah,
I thought you were referring to what busing, no.
yeah. Sorry.
Because of how Wyman was configured, there are a couple different drop-off spots on opposite ends of the building. And as we looked at it, we felt Wyman would be the easiest to be able to host a large-scale drop-off, not to mention just the other elementaries, the mixing of, we thought we could isolate the drop-off for the early childhood program better at Wyman than we could at the other two buildings. So that seemed to fit. We don't have plans drawn up yet. We've talked through some general ideas about how we might use that back area or how we might do something with the drop-off down by the gym and reconfigure that in some way. But it offered more possibilities, we thought, than the other two.
That was part of your thing. That's really.
Yeah. Sorry, I misunderstood you.
Greg?
Yes.
You show no impact to classrooms at Truman and at Mark Twain, but so you're only utilizing one, you're getting rid of 4 or 5 fourth grade classes out of each one. Are those going to be full, or are those going to be available for growth?
Those, part of the SPED equalization, right now at Mark Twain, our SPED teachers, we don't have in traditional classroom spaces. So we would have to make the choice of either renovating their spaces they're in now. What we built this model in was assuming that we moved all of them into regular classrooms. And by doing that, that took up the empty fourth grade rooms that would be moving out.
Same thing, true.
Same thing
Same
at
thing
Truman
at Truman.
Road, get the people out of the,
We would get the people out of the loft and hopefully some of the people out of the hallways where we're offering the Title I program.
Stages and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, now the stages at
Stages are
Wyman we would
still
still
being
use for OT-PT,
Uh-huh.
but we would like to get away from using those non-traditional classrooms
Right.
as full classrooms.
Little bitty spaces we
Yes.
saw.
Right, right.
Yes.
Is that sped
And I-
equalization's really a major part of this, that you decided to work that into this.
Yes.
I think that's important.
This gave us an opportunity to look, it's something we've been wanting to do, but this gave us an opportunity to really jump in. I should have mentioned, the packet that I put in front of you are all of the details that we worked through. The front page is the staffing impact that we talked about is equal. The second page is the SPED equalization plan. I'll mention that we found that we could do that without adding any staff at the elementary. There may be some staff movement in order to balance it between the buildings, but we wouldn't have to add staff at the elementary. Now, this whole configuration plan may require adding one position to help with ninth graders moving over to the high school, which we could have used an elementary person if we don't equalize this. But we felt the benefits of equalizing it was something we really wanted to pursue. So the first page is the staffing impact, the second page is the SPED equalization plan, and then the third page are the facility impacts that we work through at each building. And it has a few more details on that sheet than what I presented on the PowerPoint tonight.
You know, and I might just add too that the committee met, Charlotte and I attended the meeting on Tuesday when Craig went through this in pretty good detail. You know, and we did talk about the pros and cons of the two scenarios, and there are benefits to having the peer modeling at each school. And we talked about that might be an eventuality, you know, but as we kept kind of coming back to, the main thing is getting this program started and in the best way we can 2 years from now, less than 2 years from now, you know. And so this one really, because, you know, I admitted my thinking was the other way for the last couple of months, but it's just pretty compelling in all respects, and so I think it's a good
Sounds
good
like
plan.
it's clearly the most efficient.
Efficient would be a word that I would use at this point. Stacy and I have talked a lot, too, about as we begin this, for those peer model teachers to be able to be together. This is a new thing for them. These classrooms will not be like ones they've been teaching in before for our current existing staff. To make sure that we handle the intake of kids consistently and correctly with the ability to learn, be able to place kids maybe in different classrooms that are the best fit. Again, I think it allows us to get started. It allows us to understand a little more fully what this will mean when the doors open in August, and allows for the possibility of future revision and future change, and to see if we want to do something in the other buildings. A lot of the programs that we visited look different in the 5th or 6th year than they did in their first year. And I'm sure that will be the case for us, too.
I like it.
Great.
Stacy?
Anything to add, Mrs. Reed?
He didn't let you speak last time.
I know, I feel that.
Chomping at the bit to get to the mic, we can tell.
Well, and I mean, Stacy's opinions, you know, carry a lot of sway, because I mean, she's the professional in the field, and
Right.
and to me, when she says, you know, it would be a real boon to have everybody together as the program starts, I think that's important too.
I hope you can feel Stacy's input in these documents.
Yes.
Because it's
I do. They're very
woven all
very-
throughout here.
Yeah.
And the adding of staff members. No. We give Stacy a hard time. Jamie, along, to just follow up, some of the discussions we've had about how to get drop-off points, cars in and out, those type things, that over at Wyman, for example, the parking lot on the west end, which is where we currently drop off early childhood students, parents in the morning, we might eliminate some of the parking there and have teachers park on the other end of the building or out front. There's plenty of spaces available for teachers. It may not, you know, they may prefer to be closer to their actual classroom, but to be able to get cars and you know, turned around in there and coming back out may be more efficient. We'll look at those things and design those parking lots to try to accommodate that. So that's some of the things that we've talked about as well. Mark's going to come up, just introduce Mark Ruther from Honer Architects. You're all familiar with Mark. Also with us is Chuck Dale Dirks. Dirks? Dirks, sorry, from McClure Engineering. And they're going to be working through Mark on this project with us. And they've already been at our building. I think you've had staff down there at least 3 times? Yes. 3 times to evaluate what we currently, you know, our current systems and all those types of things for heating and cooling and all the engineering aspects that will come in. So I think we've had 3 construction meetings already, and along with their crew. And so as you see tonight in our presentation, this is just an update of where we are right now, and we'll be open for questions and comments. Just to take you back to the CSIP goal, the community's asked us to provide quality facilities and things that are very functional, neat and clean, and they can be utilized by students and faculty well, and the community. Our committee, there were some things that we identified immediately that needed to be addressed on the construction side. One, and I won't read these to you, you have the document in front of you, but construction at the high school for the movement of ninth grade. We needed to assess and renovate facilities if necessary to accommodate the expansion of early childhood programming. So we've been working through that, and we'll continue. Assess the needs and renovate areas necessary to accommodate grade level movements. For example, 7th grade moving or 5th grade coming, 4th grade coming into the middle school and 7th grade moving out. Obviously, some of those classrooms may have different purposes.